and then said that it's not the job of the pastors to get involved in politics. And then, needless to say, once he decided that, oh wait, maybe things are different, he like tried to find every example of that speech and burn it. What emerged from, there's a direct line from the people that are with Trump now. I suddenly forgot the name of the guy that gave the sermon right before Trump's inauguration. What was his name?
Robert Jeffress.
Robert Jeffress. And Robert Jeffress and Jerry Falwell embraced the same narrative, which is that of Nehemiah. Remember, like Jeffress would always say, Nehemiah built a wall, right? But of course, Falwell talked about building a wall, and what he wanted was pious patriots to govern. This was the message that had resonance, but with a church that had felt like it had lost cultural purchase in the South. And the reason for that decline in cultural purchase was partly due to the stances they had taken on integration in opposition to it, and then a rising group of Christians within their own churches who were not so persuaded. And so if you actually read, I suggest you read, it's actually a really interesting book, which is Falwell's autobiography. Falwell talks about having a conversation with someone who tells him to integrate the church, and also dealing with like the amount of money he had to lose by integrating the church. And it's this very sort of like fumbled effort to discuss the problem, which is he has a conversation with the guy shining his shoes. And it's like, oops, like maybe no, maybe that's not like, and because I'm not sure if the story actually happened, but that's the sort of image he has in mind for what that kind of racial reconciliation would look like. And so it's out of this weird sort of internally at cross pressures sort of Southern Baptist coalition of ministers that have made their way into kind of Trump's milieu. There's sort of another generation afterwards that we're seeing this kind of stuff at work. And it emerges really out as a church that originally wanted complete isolation from politics because they already got what they wanted. I'm trying to remember Charles Marsh's book on this called like The Long Hot Summer. So I'm trying to remember, I can't quite remember what it's called. It's really good at this. There was a religious establishment of white Baptist preachers who wanted to isolate politics from religion as much as possible because it suited what they needed as preachers. And that's what Falwell advanced, and when he lost, he retrenched on the idea of political activism, but with an effort to kind of hold the church together as it became increasingly open to ideas of racial integration. So Falwell was sort of following the crowd even as he was trying to lead it.
Well, with that, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Chapo, please go.
Yeah, so I think that there is little in the Trump White House and the administration or Trump's advisors that would appeal to King. I think the example of what just happened with Justice Kavanaugh illustrates that. Because Republicans stood behind this man even though there was a credible, unresolved accusation against him. Credible, not proven, but we weren't in a court of law. Secondly, the question about whether he really fully disclosed regarding his drinking habits in his youth. These two together, it seems to me, was enough for Republicans to have really said, this is not the right person to put in this job. Not that he couldn't still be a prominent judge. I think that that's not the kind of thing that King would have endorsed. Okay? I think, secondly, what was hopeful to me, and I must tell you, full disclosure, I have never been a supporter of Trump, but what was hopeful to me was the idea that there was going to be some kind of policy agenda that would serve the needs of the working class, because that was going to serve black people, white people, Hispanics. It was going to serve all people who were disadvantaged. That was hopeful. But I think what the administration has demonstrated is that that's good rhetoric, but that doesn't drive policy. That policy is really driven by what serves big business with an argument, a trickle-down argument. I think that was completely at odds with who King was and what his values were, which was about the poor and against capitalism. So I can't see where there would be much to admire. And what I think King would say to those in opposition, and it's what I feel myself, I resonate with this, is that the culture has become so vicious. Going back to Josh's point about this culture of, you didn't use the word blame, what was the word you used?
Fault and transgression.
Fault and transgression, where everybody's pointing fingers at everybody else, and it is so angry and venomous, and there is absolutely no room for forgiveness or understanding or reconciliation. King would have abhorred that on the right and on the left. And he would be counseling all of us that however much we might be in disagreement with the Trump administration and its policies and its practices, you know, like personal life and other issues, we do not allow the culture to descend to the place where it is now. That's what I think.
Thank you. Sam, do you have any closing words?
Only a word of thanks to all of you who have attended throughout the day, to those who have attended for part of the day and are no longer with us, and to those watching on Facebook. I'm very grateful for your attention, and please join me again in thanking the speakers who made this really a thought-provoking conversation. You know, often one attends this sort of thing and walks out without it making much impression, but that's not the case, at least for me. So I really do sincerely thank you all.
Speakers lined up before we leave. You have a presentation by Nikita.
That's a great idea. Sure.
I saw you get